Well, the latest reboot of Charlie's Angels has flopped terribly at the box office, and the reason is because people don't want to watch Charlie's Angels, apparently. Hi, everybody. I'm Bill Whittle here with Steve Green and Scott Ott, and this is your right angle about the era in time that's going to be called the time of the feminist movies, or the desert, depending on how you look at things. Steve, this recent Charlie's Angels failed miserably. And the reason it failed, if you talk to the director of the movie, actor Elizabeth Banks, she says it failed because it reinforces the stereotype in Hollywood that men don't go and see women do action movies. So if I understand Elizabeth Banks correctly, and I think I do, the reason that Charlie's Angels failed is because nobody wants to see three women named Charlie's Angels doing an action movie. But the reason they made it Charlie's Angels instead of Fox Force 3 was because Charlie's Angels was one of the most successful shows in the history of television. Can you square that circle for me?
Oh, man. Yeah. Young men buy the majority of movie tickets in this country, especially during the summer. And if there's one thing young men hate, it's watching hot chicks kick ass. No, we can't have that. No hot chicks for me. No, thank you. No guns. Those are the two things in the world that men hate the most, especially American men. We didn't tune out Charlie's Angels. We tuned out the stupid message. And the thing is, you can make an action movie with a female lead that even has a feminist message that people will flock to. I can't tell you how much I enjoyed the Wonder Woman movie that came out a year or two ago with Gal Gadot. It was a lot of fun. It was a feminist movie, but plot wise, it was not. I am strong Amazon woman. I need no men. Be gone with you, or any of that stuff. It was in a sense, in the best way. It was really about teamwork. One of my all-time favorite versions of Superman were the old Fleischer cartoons from the 1940s. These were, I think, 8-10-minute shorts. They were really, really well drawn. If you're thinking, Looney Tunes stuff,
they were great.
They were really, really well drawn, well done. And the one that springs to mind, I can't remember the name of it, but there's this giant meteor asteroid heading towards the Earth, and there's this special magnetic space gun that the scientists had developed, and that had accidentally was drawing this asteroid towards the Earth, was going to destroy us all, kill us all. And Superman goes out into space to stop the thing, and it's too big. Here's Superman, with powers far beyond those of mortal men, and he can't stop the damn rock because it's too damn big. And so he comes back to Earth, and he has to enlist the help of Lois Lane to figure out how to redo the magnet gun to divert the asteroid instead of sucking it towards the Earth. And that's what was so great about it. Yet a really strong central character, Superman, who nevertheless finds his powers aren't strong enough and has to enlist Lois's help to figure out how to save the day. It's a really good cartoon. I think you could get them on the iTunes store if they're not streaming on Netflix or anything like that. They're great fun. My boys loved them when they were younger. I'm 50. I love them still. And Wonder Woman did that same thing. I thought the last battle in that movie was a little too drawn out, a little too flashy. It could have used a lot of editing. But the crux of it was Wonder Woman couldn't be in two places at once. She could either stop the big bad guy, or she could stop the horrible airplane filled with all the chemical weapons that was going to kill a million people on the Western Front. And so it was up to Steve Rogers to get on board that plane and to stop the horrible thing from happening. And we love it. We love it, male or female, when our characters are flawed and need to call on the powers of mortal men or mortal women to assist them, because we don't want the unstoppable superhero who never breaks a sweat. We want to see a real story. Wonder Woman gave us that, and a strong message about female empowerment at a time when women were simply not empowered. And I love that. Audiences loved it too. When I saw the trailer for Charlie's Angels and a female Bosley showed up and said, "Bosleys can be women," or whatever the stupid disdain-filled line was, I tuned it out. I knew this movie wasn't for me or for anyone.
Scott, these charges of misogyny, men being too insecure to appreciate women in strong roles, the inability of men to accept the fact that women can be heroes too, is what is trotted out when people like this make really, really awful movies. So let's talk Ghostbusters.
In general, yeah. I mean, like most of America, I did not go to see the female version of Ghostbusters. And I think that there's a key difference here, though, for anybody who raises this kind of idea, that for some reason, if you do a remake and women are involved, that it can't get an audience or whatever. Ghostbusters was not only a primarily male movie, like it was like an uber male movie.
It's a frat party movie.
Yeah, it's just a bunch of geek jokes, basically. And there's a certain, not only a certain culture about that movie, but there's a moment in time as well. And I think that's what a lot of these people who are doing remakes miss, because in a lot of cases, these films or these TV shows were a metaphor for a moment that has passed. You know, when you were talking about this, I was thinking, well, gee, I can't wait to see the E.T. remake. I would never want to see an E.T. remake. I don't, that captured a particular moment in our history, and it was charming, and there was a certain naivete to it, and you just couldn't pull it off today. You couldn't do that. And by the same token, Charlie's Angels was one of a crop of TV shows and movies at that time that featured strong female characters who were kind of breaking through this idea that all cops had to be, I think of Angie Dickinson, who played a police detective as well. And so it's not a breakthrough anymore. It's like the majority of women, people going to college are women now. The huge numbers of women that are involved, not only in police forces, in the military, in the legal profession, all of these kind of things. So it's not a breakthrough anymore. So what, as Steve said in a previous episode this week, what do you bring in that's fresh to this argument? Well, if the only thing you're bringing is fresh is, another attempt to try to beat your political agenda into somebody, that's what people aren't interested in. Do we want to see kick-ass female heroes? I have 2 words for you. Lara Croft.
Yeah.
Sarah Connor, Ellen Ripley, and the list goes on and on and on. I got a couple of things I want to say about this. First of all, I can remember having grown up during the time of Charlie's Angels when the feminists were saying basically, we deserve the same chance as men. We want to be treated equally as men, and we want to go out in the world and show men that we can do what they can do, and so on. Seemed reasonable to me. So when your movie fails because it's a terrible movie featuring wooden characters and nondescript action scenes and the insertion of the director into a key role in order to make it different from the thing that we're supposed to go be seeing because we know it, that's one thing. But when you blame the failure of your terrible movie on men's insecurity, you're just kind of crying about it. Elizabeth, I hate to put it quite so bluntly, but man up, honey. So there's that. Your movie failed because it was not a good movie or it was not well marketed, and it failed for that reason, not because of some institutional bias that made your movie, which is absolutely wonderful, fail. You made a bad movie, and you made a bad movie cheaply. When I say cheaply, I don't mean in terms of budget. I mean, you just piggybacked on top. You made a lazy movie. Let's put it that way. One of the reasons that the Ghostbusters film remake a couple years ago failed was what Scott said. Ghostbusters is Animal House after they graduate. Ghostbusters is a frat boy movie after they graduate, and that particular type of humor is dependent on guys being kind of gross and having this relationship and so on. When they remade the Ghostbusters movie, I don't know what the percentage of it was, but something like 60 or 70% of the lines in that movie were improvised. And it was the same phenomena. We're going to take funny women, and we're going to put them together, and we're going to roll the cameras, and then they're all going to keep coming up with lines until they find the one that gets the biggest laugh. And then that's the one that we're going to put in the script. That's how Charlie's Angels remake was done. Just nothing but ad libs. That's lazy. That's not writing. That's just assuming that you've got funny women, so you're going to make a funny movie. You're wrong. Needless to say, the entire charge that men can't handle strong women is utterly demolished by things like, as Scott mentioned, Lara Croft in the Tomb Raider series and movies. Needless to say, Ellen Ripley from Aliens ended up doing 5 movies as the lead character. Sarah Connor in this catastrophically bad remake, which goes and undoes everything that Terminator was about, was a beloved action hero. So the entire charge is wrong. But now I'd like to get to the real point of it. You can have women that make great movies, but you can't have a present day feminist cannot make a good film. It's not possible. And the reason it's not possible is as follows. A modern day feminist will make a film about women, about empowered women. And because their value system is so uptight and the level of insecurity is so high, they will do what they did with Star Wars, what they did with Terminator, what they did with Charlie's Angels, what they did with Ghostbusters, what they did with all of these things. In order to make the woman appear strong, they will make the woman invincible. You're not going to beat Rey in Star Wars for this. She's never, ever seen the inside of a spaceship that wasn't a wreck, but she climbs inside the Millennium Falcon and flies it even better than Han Solo does. She's never picked up a lightsaber before, but she picks one up and she defeats the Dark Lord, Darth Vader, in the first movie pretty much effortlessly. Because you can't have, this is the feminist philosophy today, you can't have a woman fail because that would be showing women as weak. But this is not just... This is not just bad politics. This is just bad storytelling. You cared about Luke Skywalker in a way you don't care about Rey because you saw Luke failing repeatedly. He was impetuous. He went out before he was ready. He didn't listen to his teachers. He tried to raise his fighter out of the swamp. And when he failed, you could see he was heartbroken. They allowed him to fail so that when he succeeded, that would be something that the audience would agree with emotionally, and that makes a good story. But if you're going to start from a position where women are infallible and all powerful and all women are all powerful, they don't have to learn from anybody, then what you end up with is you end up with the difference between Captain Marvel, which was awful, just awful. I can do anything because I'm a woman, and there's the arch enemy, done. Versus Wonder Woman, which was in fact a great feminine movie about a believable feminine character because she had human weaknesses, not female weaknesses, human weaknesses. She had a belief in something. She was idealistic. She was in love. She had all of these qualities that make her vulnerable. And if you're not willing to put a female character through the ringer and have her be defeated and fail and lose confidence, if you're not willing to have that happen, you cannot create a movie that anybody wants to see. It's just, if you start off invincible and you end off invincible, there's no arc, there's no change, there's nothing. Best thing I ever read about screenplays, and I've written 11 of them, is that somebody said, if you start a scene in a screenplay that doesn't completely reverse what happens at the beginning of that scene, then that scene needs to come out of the movie. Wow, that's really true. So, Elizabeth, it's not that people are unable to accept that Charlie's Angels is a bunch of women who are action stars. I saw Charlie's Angels on TV. I never missed it. Most of us our age never missed it. We're perfectly capable of dealing with that. I suspect what your fundamental problem is that in the TV show, we saw these women using their wits and courage to win the cases, but we didn't see people like Kristen Stewart or whatever her name is, that block of wood from the Twilight movies. We didn't see a person who was 5'1" or whatever she is, pounding to death giant guys. We didn't see Ellen Ripley climb on top of the alien queen and twist its neck off. And we didn't see Sarah Connor punch the Terminator into the flaming pit of liquid. She didn't crush his head with her bare hands in her first movie. It is unbelievable, this modern feminist ideal. It is unbelievable. And I mean, literally, you lose the movie when you see women who are a quarter of the size of the men that they're fighting constantly beating up guys and throwing them around. It's not believable. So why don't you do what has worked in the past with Ellen Ripley and with Sarah Connor and with all the rest? Why don't you write a movie about an actual person with actual vulnerabilities, actually failing at things, and then give that person the ability to win using the assets that they have, not the assets that you somehow wish they had, and therefore you imbue them with from beginning to end. This is superb advice that will not be taken. But this period in time will be the period where male movies were remade, as Steve pointed out. It's a complete failure of imagination and creativity. And they're being remade with women doing the things that men do. And they wonder why it doesn't work. It doesn't work because Kristen Stewart cannot beat up The Rock. I don't care if you show me her flying through the air and kicking him. I don't believe it. Nobody does. Get with the program, make a movie about a real person, and you'd be amazed at what would happen. And stop blaming males' inability to accept female characters because frankly, it sounds like I'm a girl. Don't do it. It's beneath you. Okay, that'll do it for this edition of Right Angle, brought to you by the paying members of BillWhittle.com. We'd love to have you as members. We are independent, and we talk about what we want, no matter what people say, because we don't work for one person or one studio. We cannot be canceled. We work for thousands of you, and that gives us the ability to speak what's on our mind. So thank you very much for our members for making the show possible. We'll see you next week on Right Angle.